You'll never see that $300,000 again. That's what my son said to me, sitting across the table, smirking like he'd already won. It wasn't anger that hit me first. It was disbelief. My own flesh and blood, looking me in the eye, telling me I'd never get back the money I had spent a lifetime earning. My name is Edward Lane, and what you're about to hear is the story of how that moment changed everything, and how I made sure my son would regret every last word. Sit back and let me tell you how I lost more than just money, and how I took back my dignity, my peace, and my future. Before we get too far, don't forget to subscribe, and let me know where you're listening from in the comments. It started on a cold January morning, the kind where frost clings to the windows and your breath hangs in the air like a cloud. I'd been up early, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of black coffee, going over some old paperwork. I wasn't looking for trouble. Trouble, however, has a way of finding you, especially when it comes in the form of your own flesh and blood. My son Brian had been acting strange for months. He was short on phone calls, evasive in conversations, and always in a hurry when we did talk. At first, I chalked it up to work stress. He was in real estate, that endless churn of deals, clients, and half-baked promises. But then my accountant called me. "Edward," he said, voice tight, "you need to check your business account right now. There's a transfer for $300,000, and it's not to any of your vendors." My stomach tightened. I logged in, and there it was, $300,000 wired out in a single transaction. The recipient? Lane Development, LLC, my son's company. I didn't want to believe it. This was my boy, the kid I taught to ride a bike, the one I stayed up with all night when he had a fever. But the numbers don't lie, and neither did the timestamp. When I called him, he didn't deny it. "Dad, it's a business move," he said, his tone dripping with arrogance. "You'll get it back, eventually. Just don't worry about it." "Brian," I said, keeping my voice level, "that's my retirement money." He chuckled. "You'll never see that $300,000 again if you keep thinking small. I'm building something big here. You should be thanking me." That was the moment something in me shifted. I didn't yell, I didn't threaten, I just went quiet. And that silence? That was the beginning of his undoing. He leaned back in his chair, still smiling, tapping his fingers on the table like he was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. It wasn't because I didn't have words. It was because I knew, in that instant, that nothing I said would matter. He had already decided who I was to him. Someone small, someone weak, someone he could take from without consequence. The restaurant around us was noisy, but all I heard was the pounding in my ears, the clink of forks, the soft laughter from the table next to us, and that smirk. I stared at him for a long moment, then reached for my coffee, taking a slow sip like we were talking about the weather. "You sure about that?" I asked. My voice was calm, even the kind of tone that makes people lean in, not pull back. "Oh, I'm sure," he said. "You've been, what's the word, generous. You gave me the money. That's what you said, remember? You can't just take back a gift." A gift. That's what he called it. I thought about the day I transferred that money to him. He had shown up at my door looking pale, talking about an investment opportunity, swearing up and down it was a sure thing. He said all the right words. Talked about securing our family's future. He even brought my granddaughter into it, saying how this would give her the life she deserved. So I gave him the $300,000. Not because I was careless, but because I was a father. Now here he was, calling it a gift, smiling like it was some clever loophole. I didn't argue. I didn't threaten. I just sat there, nodding slowly, memorizing the way he looked when he thought he was untouchable. On the drive home, the rain tapped against the windshield, steady and soft. My hands rested on the wheel, not tight, not shaking. I'd been here before, not with him, but with life. I'd lost things before. I'd been underestimated before. And every single time, I came back stronger. That night, I went into my study. The walls smelled faintly of old paper and cedar from the shelves I built myself. I sat at the desk, unlocked the drawer, and pulled out a small black notebook. The one I never let anyone see. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger. Not of debts in dollars, but of debts in respect. I flipped to a clean page, wrote down the date, and under it, just one line. $300,000, taken by Daniel. I closed the book and placed it back in the drawer. My mind was already moving ahead, thinking through the quiet moves that would matter. See, people think revenge is about explosions, big, loud moments. But the truth is, real revenge is patient. It's a drip of water that, over time, carves stone. I didn't need to make him scared today. I just needed to start the clock. 3 days later, I went to the bank. Not to talk about the stolen money. Not yet. I went to talk about Daniel. The branch manager was a man I'd known for years. I'd helped his father rebuild his fishing dock after a storm, back when most of the town was too busy to care. We shook hands, made small talk, and then I leaned in. I need to know about certain accounts, I said. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Come into my office. Inside, door closed, blinds drawn, he told me exactly what I needed to hear. Daniel had not put the money into any kind of long-term investment. He hadn't used it for a business. He'd dumped it into a private account, and, over the last 3 months, it had been bleeding. Vacations, luxury cars, high-end dining. He was burning through it like it was monopoly money. I thanked the manager, shook his hand, and left without another word. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't confront him. Instead, I went home and began laying out the pieces of a game he didn't even know we were playing. Because here's the thing, when someone steals from you, they expect anger. They expect you to fight, to shout, to threaten. But what they don't expect is silence. And silence, when you know how to use it, is louder than anything else in the world. 2 weeks passed. Not a word from me to him. I knew it was driving him crazy. Daniel wasn't the type to handle silence well. He thrived on reaction, on pulling emotion out of people. Without it, he was like a fire starved of oxygen. The first crack came in the form of a text. Hey, Dad. We should talk. Clear the air. I didn't reply. A few hours later, I know you're upset, but it's done. No point in dragging it out. Still, nothing. By the third message, a picture of him by a pool in some resort, drink in hand. I knew exactly what game he was playing. He wanted me to feel small. He wanted to show me what he'd taken, how well he was living on my money. It was fine. Let him. He was writing his own ending, and he didn't even know it. During those 2 weeks, I made myself busy, but not with chores or distractions. I was digging. Quietly, carefully, through public records, through small-town whispers, through connections I'd built over decades. I found out he'd applied for a line of credit with the same bank he'd used to store my $300,000, the collateral, his house. The same house he was still paying off. Now here's the thing about banks. They like people who look steady, but they love people who look desperate. They'll hand you the rope you need to hang yourself if you smile the right way while asking for it. And Daniel was smiling. The 4th week, I got a call from a friend of mine who works in county records. You might want to know, she said, Daniel's filed some paperwork. Looks like he's trying to move a good portion of his assets under a trust. Who's the trustee? I asked. She paused. Himself. I smiled. He was panicking. That was good. Panic makes people sloppy. Here's the thing most people don't realize about big sums of money. It's not just the number in the account. It's the footprint it leaves. Big money attracts attention. Bankers, clerks, even certain federal eyes. And once it starts moving in strange ways, people start asking questions. I didn't have to lift a finger to make Daniel's movements look suspicious. He was doing that himself. All I had to do was feed the right information into the right ears. By the start of the 2nd month, Daniel called me. This time, I answered. Dad, he started, voice tight. I think we should. I'm busy, I said, and hung up. That was it. That was the moment the power shifted. Because now he knew I wasn't going to plead or negotiate. If you think that was the end, you're not even close to knowing what came next. It was in the third month that the bank called me, not him, first. They'd noticed a pattern of activity in one of Daniel's accounts. They didn't give me details. They couldn't, not legally. But the fact they called me told me enough. I knew exactly why they reached out. Because of an old agreement I'd signed years ago when Daniel and I co-signed on his first property. A line buried deep in the paperwork still listed me as an emergency point of contact for financial irregularities. And now, those irregularities were flashing red. I decided it was time to set the final stage. But not in the way most people think. I didn't want to take him to court. I didn't want to scream about betrayal. I wanted him to wake up one day and realize slowly and painfully that every safety net he thought he had was gone. So I went back to the branch manager. We had coffee in his office, closed door, blinds down. "Can I assume," I asked, "that if certain loans went unpaid, the collateral would be called in?" He nodded. "That's standard." "And that collateral, houses, cars, personal assets, would go up for public auction?" "Yes." "Good," I said, standing. "I'll see you soon." Over the next 2 weeks, I stayed silent again. And that's when the second crack became a break. Daniel showed up at my door, not with a smirk this time, but with dark circles under his eyes. "We need to talk," he said. I stepped aside, letting him in. He walked straight to the kitchen table, the same spot where he'd once told me I'd never see that $300,000 again. He sat, looked at me, then looked away. "What did you do?" I smiled faintly. "I lived my life." "You talked to the bank?" "I talked to a lot of people," I said. That was all I gave him. Because the thing about silence is, when someone's desperate, they fill it with their own fear. Daniel didn't come back for 3 days. When he did, it wasn't at my door. It was outside the hardware store, of all places. I was loading lumber into the back of my truck when he pulled up, window down. "Dad," he called, leaning across the passenger seat, "we're in trouble." I didn't answer. I just kept stacking boards. He got out, walked over, and stood by the tailgate. "I'm serious. They froze my account. I can't even touch my own money." I looked at him, slow and deliberate. "Your money?" He flinched, just slightly. "You know what I mean." "No, Daniel," I said. "I know exactly what you mean. Truth is, the bank didn't need me to do much. Once a certain threshold of unusual activity is hit, their protocols are automatic and expensive to get out of. Legal teams get involved, assets get evaluated, and suddenly every dollar is a question mark. I knew Daniel didn't have the patience for it. Patience was my game. 2 more weeks passed. Every time I saw him around town, the polish was wearing off. The resort tan faded, replaced by a drawn, restless look. He wasn't driving his flashy car anymore either, just the beat-up pickup he'd always sworn he'd sell when things were better. Then came the foreclosure notice. I knew about it before he did. My friend at County Records texted me a picture. Guess the bank didn't like the way he smiled. I almost felt sorry for him in that moment. Almost. But then I remembered the sound of his voice that day at the kitchen table, the smug certainty when he told me I'd never see my $300,000 again. No, this wasn't cruelty, this was balance. It was around then I put the final part of the plan into motion. The thing about auctions is that most people don't even know they're happening until it's too late. A house can go on the block and be gone in a day if the right buyers are lined up. I made sure I was one of them. The morning of the auction, I got there early. Daniel wasn't present. I doubted he could bear to watch. The bidding was quick, clean. There was only one other serious contender, a developer looking to flip the property. But he wasn't prepared for someone willing to go all cash, no contingencies. When the gavel came down, the house was mine. Again. 3 days later, Daniel showed up at my porch. Not the confident, calculating man I'd seen months ago. This was someone stripped down to the bone. "You bought it," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Why? I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking. Because you told me I'd never see my money again, and now... I gestured toward the driveway, where the keys to his former home sat on the table. I see it every time I walk inside. He didn't say anything for a long time. Just stood there, breathing shallow. Finally, he muttered, "You've ruined me." I shook my head. "No, Daniel, you ruined yourself. I just watched." A week later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Daniel had left town. No forwarding address, no big farewell, just gone. And me? I kept the house. Not because I needed it, but because it was proof. Proof that patience beats pride, and that silence can be louder than any argument. If you think that's the end, you haven't even seen what I did with the rest of the $300,000. I didn't touch the house right away. Letting it sit was part of the plan. The longer it stood there, unchanged but undeniably mine, the more it ate at Daniel. He might have been gone from town, but people talk, and in a place this size, they talk a lot. I made sure every little update found its way to the coffee shop chatter, the barber shop gossip, and the church parking lot conversations. Not lies, just facts. Yeah, Walter's moving in some furniture this weekend. He had the locks replaced twice. He's putting in new windows, heard they cost a fortune. It's funny how people will carry your story for you if you give them just enough to work with. A month passed. Then one morning, I found an envelope on my porch. No return address, no note on the outside. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You win. Keep it. I don't care anymore. I almost laughed. This wasn't about winning in the way he thought. I didn't need him to admit defeat. The victory was in the silence. In knowing he was somewhere far away, still thinking about a house he could have kept if he'd only done the right thing. Around that time, I decided to deal with the rest of the $300,000. It had been sitting in a separate account all this time, untouched, not because I didn't know what to do with it, but because I wanted the right use to present itself. And it did. The community center on Oak Street had been limping along for years. Roof leaks, outdated equipment, barely enough funding to keep the lights on. I'd been a member since I was in my 20s, but lately I'd stopped going. Not because I didn't care, but because it was hard to watch something good fall apart. So I walked in one Monday morning, met with the director, and wrote a check big enough to not only fix the roof, but replace every worn-out piece of equipment and fund programs for the next decade. 2 months later, we held the reopening. Fresh paint, polished floors, new everything. People from all over town came. There was food, music, laughter, the kind of warmth you can't fake. As I stood there watching kids run across the gym with brand new basketballs, a few old friends came up and asked the same question. Why now? I just smiled and said, because the money finally came home. I never told them the rest. That somewhere out there, my own son was probably hearing about the new community center, knowing exactly where the money came from and what it was supposed to be his to waste. That's the thing about revenge. The best kind isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. 6 months after Daniel left, I got one last letter. The handwriting was jagged, rushed. I heard what you did with the money. You could have helped me instead. I didn't bother replying. If he couldn't see that I had helped, just not him, then he never would. And so the house stayed mine. The money found its way into something that mattered. And Daniel? He became just another story people told in hushed voices, shaking their heads about what might have been. If you think all that's enough, you'd be wrong. There was still one last move I'd been saving, something that would make sure he never forgot exactly what he'd lost. I didn't answer Daniel's 6-word letter. I didn't need to. Silence can be a ledger. Every day he didn't hear from me, a fresh line item reminding him what he'd spent. What I did do was show up at the Oak Street Center 3 mornings a week and put my hands on things that could be fixed. A sticky door, a flickering ballast, a chess set missing its bishops. The kids started calling me Mr. W. The name stuck like sawdust in a cuff. Sarah, She ran the place with a kind of calm that makes hard work look like a picnic, pulled me into bigger projects. GED prep night needed a math tutor. The boiler liked to die on Thursdays. The grant application wanted numbers, not promises. I gave her numbers. Not flashy ones. Honest ones. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked one afternoon, the way people ask when they're grateful and suspicious at the same time. "Because I can," I said, and tightened the packing nut on a leaky faucet until the drip turned into a polite quiet. The center settled into a rhythm. Mondays were noise and ball games. Wednesdays smelled like printer toner and coffee. Fridays belonged to Miss Ruth's crock pots and a folding table that never stayed empty long. I slept better with that kind of order in the world. I didn't think about Daniel much, and when I did, it felt like looking through the wrong end of binoculars. Far away. Small. Safer that way. Until the day the bank called him. I didn't hear the call, of course, but I heard about it. Evelyn Lee from First Cascadia, square shoulders, careful eyes, a voice that never rose even when other people did, tracked me down at the center. She waited until we had a quiet corner and set a manila folder between us. "I'm here as a courtesy," she said. "Banks don't do courtesies, not without a reason." She tapped the folder. "Your son opened a revolving line against his company's receivables using a personal guarantee you co-signed 3 years ago." "I remember," I said. He was pitching, growth, and bridge like they were new words. "He drew the last of it 8 months ago," she said. "Then the receivables dried up. We placed the line in special assets. It's not unusual." "Nothing about that boy is unusual to me," I said. She breathed out. "Your son believes the debt will be written off." "Of course he does." "Then he received a call this morning," she said. "Our auditors flagged a transfer of $300,000 he initiated out of the operating account shortly before the line went delinquent. The timing is problematic. Our policy is to examine transfers that look like attempts to shield assets from secured creditors." I didn't smile. I wanted to. Evelyn looked at me like a chess player thinking 3 moves ahead. "Mr. Hayes, the paper trail you left when you moved that money, the restrictive covenant, the conditional grant language, the disbursement stamps from the trust, was precise. Clean. Most people don't think to do that." "I'm not most people," I said. "He told me I'd never see it again. I decided to make sure I would." "We'll be seeking to unwind any transfers that benefited him personally," she said. "But the principal issue is his belief that we'll forget he signed. We won't." "Daniel's talent has always been convincing himself he's the exception," I said. Evelyn closed the folder. "He'll call you. When he does, tell him this. He has options if he wants to act like a grown man. Our door isn't shut. It's just not a revolving one anymore." She stood. "Also," she hesitated, "the center. I saw the ledger in your grant application. Tight, but sound. If you'd like a small business checking with fee waivers, I can make that happen. Privately. Not everything has to be a lesson." "Sometimes it does," I said. "But, thank you." She left. The folder stayed in her hands where it belonged. I waited 2 days, then Daniel's number lit my phone. He didn't waste breath on greetings. "What did you do?" "I kept books," I said. "You should try it sometime." "They're saying I moved the money to dodge the line, that I hid assets, that there'll be a clawback." "The bank is saying you spent what wasn't yours while promising it to them," I said. "They're careful with words. You never were." He tried for contempt and got to pleading faster than I expected. "You could fix this." "I already did," I said. "I fixed the part that was mine. I fixed my mistake." He didn't like that. "You think funding some gym buys you absolution?" "It bought me a roof that doesn't leak on Tuesdays," I said. "It bought kids a warm room and a printer that works. It bought silence where there used to be shouting." "Dad, I'm going to make this easy," I said, and laid it out like a board with the pieces set. "Call Evelyn Lee. Ask for a structured plan. Agree to an income-based schedule and a spending freeze. Take a job that pays real money, not imaginary equity. You don't get to touch other people's funds until you can manage your own." He didn't answer. The quiet on the line sounded like a man discovering the floor had edges. "I won't be your cosigner again," I said. "That door is shut. You left it open too long, and the winter came in." He hung up without goodbyes. I slid the phone into my pocket and went back to recaulking a window at the center. The bead laid smooth. Clean lines make ugly things bearable. A week later, the town started to hum again, in that way it does when a story is walking by itself. A contractor told a barber who told a mail carrier, who told Miss Ruth that Daniel had flown home. Not to see me. To see anyone who might still believe him. He did the rounds. The country club friend who was always between deals. The old hockey buddy who kept a bottle under the counter and 4 favors owed above it. The cousin who ran a tire shop out by the highway and had more sense than money. By the time he reached my porch, he'd been told no enough times to find the word believable. He stood there in a coat that had seen better winters. His eyes looked like doors with the hinges worn down. "May I come in?" he asked. "You may," I said, because I was raised by a woman who believed in chairs at tables and doors that opened when hands were empty. He held his hat, an old habit from a time when he wore hats for warmth instead of style. I put coffee in front of him and waited. The trick with men like Daniel is to make silence heavy and keep your back straight while they decide whether to crawl under it or stand up inside it. He didn't talk about the bank, he talked about the weather, then about the center, then he said, "I heard you replace the windows." I did. "They look good." "They let heat stay where I put it." He ran a thumb along the mug handle. "Dad, Go see Evelyn," I said. "Don't bargain, don't perform, don't cry. Ask for the plan that hurts and heals. Sign it." He swallowed. "Will you come with me?" "No," I said. "The last time I walked into a bank with you, I signed away my piece. That was on me. This part is on you." He nodded, a jerky little motion like he didn't trust his neck. "I'm not asking for money." "You don't have to," I said. "We always ask for the thing we want least to name." He stood. The chair scraped. "I'll let you know." "You don't have to," I said, and he flinched like the words were colder than the air outside. He went. The house smelled like coffee and old wood and the kind of winter that doesn't apologize. I washed the cups and didn't watch the door. He did go see Evelyn. I know because she called me, not to gossip, not to triangulate, but to note a fact. "He came," she said. "He listened." He stopped interrupting. "I didn't expect that part." "Neither did I said. "He signed," she said. "He'll hate the numbers. But the math is merciful compared to a judgment. He'll need a job that pays every Friday. We don't care what kind. We care that he shows up." "Showing up saves lives," I said. "That should be posted in our lobby," she said, and there was something like a smile in her voice. "One more thing. The conditional grant contract you drafted? What about it?" "It's the cleanest one I've seen outside a law firm. You could have been a banker." "I like to build things people can touch," I said. "Then keep doing that," she said, and hung up. Daniel landed a job at the distribution warehouse off Route 12, not management, not glossy. A badge with a number and a shift with a start time, the kind of work that makes a back hurt and a man sleep at night if he lets it. I didn't go see him. This wasn't a movie. The lesson didn't need an audience. Other people saw. That's how I learned he kept his head down and his timesheet straight. That he didn't talk about apps or raises or rounds. That he started bringing a thermos and a sandwich instead of popping out for expensive food that never tasted as good as the receipt said it should. He still made mistakes. Missed a payment to the bank in week 3 when his car ate a belt and a tire in the same breath. Evelyn called him, not me. He went in. They moved the next 2 payments up and spread the shortfall over the quarter. No drama. No pity. Just math. On a Saturday morning, I pulled into the center small lot and found Daniel already there, standing with Sarah by the loading dock. She had her clipboard. He had his hands in his pockets. There were 3 pallets of donated books shrink-wrapped like gifts that took themselves seriously. "Got time?" Sarah asked without preamble. "We've got exactly 6 volunteers and 8,000 paperbacks." The math is wrong. Math is fixable, I said, and we started cutting plastic and setting up a lane. Box, sort, stamp, stack. Daniel took the heavy end, which is about the most grown thing a man can do when other men are watching. He didn't try to direct. He took instructions from a volunteer who wore her hair in a gray bun and had a voice that could still get a classroom of 8th graders to sit up straight. "You can put him here," she said, pointing to a spot by the stamp pad. "Yes, ma'am," he said. The pad squeaked. The books lined up like soldiers, and then like friends. We worked until the floor looked like a library had exploded, and then had the decency to put itself back together. Sweat makes strangers into a team. At lunch, Sarah nodded toward a plastic tub. "Grab a sandwich, turkey or turkey." Daniel waited until every other hand had gone through first. Then he took half a sandwich and 1 apple, the way you do when you're trying to be smaller than your hunger. "You don't have to prove anything," I said. "I do," he said quietly, "to myself." That was the first thing he'd said I believed, without a splinter of doubt. There's a kid named Malik who started showing up at the center at the same time every day, the way a clock shows up. He didn't say much the first week. Second week, he watched the chess players. Third week, he sat down across from a board and touched the pawn like he was petting a cat. Daniel saw the way the kid hovered and didn't hover. On a Thursday, instead of sweeping, he slid into the chair opposite Malik. "You like rules or stories?" Daniel asked. "Both," Malik said, honest as a bruise. "Good," Daniel said. "Chess is rules that tell a story." They played. Daniel let the kid take a night on a bad trade, and then made a face, like the world was ending, to earn a small grin. He showed him forks and pins, and the idea that sometimes you give away a small thing to protect a bigger one. They played again the next day, and the next. Malik started winning on purpose. Daniel didn't pretend to be dumb to make him feel smart. He just made the next game harder. That's what men owe boys. A clean fight and the tools to throw a better punch next time. 3 months went like that. Work, payments, books, games, Miss Ruth's chili. Miss Ruth's lecture if you didn't rinse your bowl right. The kind of life you can live inside without getting splinters. Then Daniel made a move I didn't see coming, which is maybe the best proof that something inside him had shuffled. He showed up at my house with a folder. Not thick, not the kind meant to scare. He set it on the table and slid it toward me. "What's that?" I asked. "A list," he said. "Names of people I owe. Not just money, time, apologies, tools. I started paying the small ones. I'm working my way up." I opened the folder. There were handwritten lines, each with an amount or a deed next to it. Mrs. Alvarez, fix gate. Leon, return compressor. Stan, $80 gas. Brenda, babysitting hours traded for dollars she never asked for. Bank, as agreed. Dad, and then a blank. He didn't look at me. He looked at the list like it was a map. "What goes on my line?" I asked. "Not money," he said. "I don't get to buy my way out. I want to earn Sundays. I want to be asked to carry the heavy end without being told. I want—" He stopped, the way men stop before they say love, and then pretend they were going to say anything else. "Write it when you know," I said, and handed him a pen. He didn't write. He capped the pen and pocketed it. Some debts need to sit on the tongue a long time before you swallow them. We weren't done, not by a long road. I know the shape of backslides too well to mistake a straight week for a straight life. But the road had stopped pointing straight down. That was enough for me to sleep. Summer came and shook the town awake. The center's air conditioning struggled and then died. Evelyn's fee waivers saved us a month's worth of pain. I drove fans over from my garage. Daniel and Malik built a bracket to hold one in the gym window, and I pretended not to admire how square it was. In July, Daniel saw Isabella in the grocery store. He didn't tell me. The town did, the way it goes with fire and wind. They stood by the oranges too long, army at ease. She did most of the talking. He didn't touch the old script. He left with milk and eggs and a receipt no longer than a finger. He didn't call me afterward, and I didn't ask. August brought two things: a flyer for a city council candidate who wanted to cut non-essential programs, and a letter from Evelyn. The flyer made noise. We hosted a night at the center where people could talk into a microphone about what essential looked like from their side of the street. Not shouting. Stories. You change budgets by changing faces. The candidate came and sat in the last row and tried not to nod and failed. The letter from Evelyn was quiet. A single line: "He hasn't missed in 60 days. I sat with that sentence in my hands for a long time. Some numbers are prayers, some are forgiveness you can count. A week later, the warehouse posted a supervisor opening. Daniel didn't talk about it. He stayed late one afternoon stamping book plates because Miss Ruth's arthritis was acting up, and when I asked what was wrong, he said nothing. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Apply, I said. If you don't get it, show up the next day. If you do get it, show up the next day. He wrote the application like a man writing on a wall in a storm. Clean, simple, no boasts. Just hours, and tasks and the names of people who would actually answer a phone if called. He got it, not because of me. Because the shift lead, a woman who didn't tolerate fools or flirts, wrote reliable on a form in the box that matters. He told me by text at 5:42 a.m. a picture of a laminated badge with a different color stripe. I stared at the screen until it went dark and then told the coffee to do something special for once. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks after that. New responsibilities. New mistakes. He missed chess with Malik once and then called the kid's mother himself to apologize. And she said it was fine, and then told 3 people at church that she had never heard a man apologize like that. Late August heat settled over the town like a quilt you don't want but keep anyway. The community garden the center ran needed a fence. The old one leaned like a drunk after midnight. We set posts. Daniel lined them with a string and insisted on resetting one I said was good enough. It will bother me every time I walk past, he said. Good, I said. Let it. When the fence stood straight, a breeze cut through, and the chimes on the back porch made a sound that felt like a porch knows it has a job and likes it. One evening, as the sun pulled itself low and mean, Daniel showed up at my door with a dented toolbox. Yours, he said. The set I borrowed in 2019. You remembered the year, I said. The smell, he said. Autumn, old leaves in the driveway, hot metal. I opened the box and checked. Every socket in its place. A miracle. He watched my face. Men watch faces like they watched weather before radar. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I know, I said. Evelyn says if I keep this up for 6 months, she'll move me out of special assets. She's right, I said. And the line will be closed for good. It's been closed for a while, I said. He nodded. I know. We stood in the small space between bad years and better ones, like men who understand that ground can lie to you if you don't keep a shovel handy. Then September rolled over and fall made a show of itself, and the center got busier than a Thursday at a diner. Kids back in school meant homework hour needed more tables. We got them, measured, cut, sanded the edges so no one's sleeve would snag. One night, after the last kid left and the lights hummed in that not-quite silence of big rooms, Sarah sat on the stage and kicked 1 foot like she was marking time on a metronome only she could hear. You going to run for council? She asked. What on earth would make you ask that? I said. The way you look at budgets like they're projects and not weapons, she said. People like that. I like fixing doors, I said. Sometimes the door is the meeting, she said. I'm too old to learn to pretend to clap when I don't mean it, I said. Then don't pretend, she said, and smiled the kind of smile you give a man right before you hand him a hammer. I didn't answer. I went home to a house that knew my steps and poured myself a small whiskey and said goodnight to a picture frame that held more years than any ledger. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the center before I did. He was in the parking lot with Malik and a handful of middle schoolers, lining out a rectangle with chalk and string. What's this? I asked. Half court, he said. No more chasing each other in the street. No more "we almost got hit" stories. I got the paint cheap from a guy who owes a favor. "You're learning to cash the right favors," I said. He grinned, the kind that doesn't look around to see who's watching. "I brought coffee," he said, and put a thermos in my hand. We painted lines. The kids walked the string like tightropes and got it more on themselves than the asphalt. It dried in the sun and looked like order laid over chaos and held down with good intentions. When it was done, Malik took the first shot from the top of the key. It hit the rim, kissed the backboard, and fell in with a mercy that made 3 of the kids raise their arms like they'd just touched lightning. Daniel whooped so loud Miss Ruth came out with a spoon and told him to hush, and he said "yes, ma'am," like he'd been waiting years to be told what to do by someone who loved him enough to say it. We weren't close to any kind of ending, not in the way stories like to shake hands and go home, but something had shifted from punishment to practice. He wasn't trying to avoid falling, he was learning to stand. That's when the bank called again. This time, they called me. Evelyn's voice was all business, but I could hear a thread of something else running under it. Relief, maybe, or professional pride. "Mr. Hayes," she said. 2 items. First, your son has moved out of special assets. He's still making payments. He's not out of the woods, but he's walking on a path instead of thrashing in the trees. "And the second?" I asked. "The second is courtesy again," she said. A very old vendor filed a small claim against his defunct LLC for an unpaid $1,900 invoice and somehow served it on you at your address from years ago. It happens. I've already corrected the record with the court clerk. The papers will go to him, not you. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just keep doing whatever you're doing. It's rare for a file like his to trend quiet. Quiet is my favorite metric." We hung up. I set the phone down on the workbench at the back of the center and looked at the wall. Someone, one of the kids, probably, had drawn a small crown in pencil near the outlet and then erased it badly. The ghost of it remained. I touched it with my thumb and thought about the line I hadn't asked Daniel to fill in next to my name in his ledger. What did I want? Not apologies. Not a parade. Not repayment. Money spent on the right things never feels lost. I wanted Sundays back. A porch light that meant something. A half-court painted straight. A chess game that takes 40 happy minutes and ends with "good game" and hands that know how to shake. I wanted to sit in the last row of the gym while a kid read a poem that didn't rhyme and still landed. I wanted to see Daniel look up halfway through his 3rd shift of the week and realize he was tired and lucky at the same time. I wanted him to be the man who takes the heavy end and never complains, because work says thank you in the way a hinge does, by not squeaking. The chalk crown on the wall smudged under my thumb and then disappeared. Good. We didn't need kings here. We needed men who learned their math and kept showing up. Got it. Picking up right after. We didn't need kings here. We needed men who learned their math and kept showing up. I woke to a hard frost and the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own breath. The center's heat kicked on with a hollow thump. Pipes settled. The old clock over the check-in desk blinked 6 o'clock in stubborn red. On the table, the ledger lay open where I'd left it. Columns straight, totals clean, not a penny out of place. At 6:07, my phone vibrated. "Unknown caller," the screen said, though both of us knew that was a polite lie. I let it buzz once, twice. On the 3rd, I answered. A man cleared his throat. "Is this Walter Hayes?" "It is." "This is Donnelly, Regional Counsel for North Ridge," he said. "We're calling regarding activity on 3 instruments tied to the Harper collateral bundle, internal designation H Delta 714. "Say it another way," I said. "Your son and his partner opened a line against escrowed funds not legally theirs. The draw triggered our audit. We've frozen their access, and we're executing on the personal guarantee. Yours is not on the guarantee," he added, neutral and crisp, despite rumors to the contrary. I leaned against the window frame and watched the street silver as the dawn came up. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing," Donnelly said. "You cut your exposure years ago. But your son is going to need a conversation that isn't with us." The line clicked dead. I set the phone beside the ledger and stood a while with my hands on the back of a folding chair, feeling the metal cool through my palms. There are moments in a life when the noise drops, and the shape of a thing finally shows itself. This was one. By 8, the hallway held the small weather of a winter morning. Boots clumping, mittens steaming on radiator grates, the sweet chemical smell of new dry erase markers. Greg was early, patch kit in one hand, coffee in the other. He nodded at me, then at the whiteboard where the day's list read: math, long division, resume, clean verbs only, coat swap, restock sizes 8 to 10, chess, no gloating. He was halfway to the supply closet when the door banged open and Michael came in like a wind-blown newspaper, creased, restless, all edges. He looked past me, past the kids, past the bulletin board where someone had pinned a flyer for free tax prep. His eyes found mine and stopped. "We need to talk," he said, not loud, not soft, just narrow. "Office," I said. We sat across from each other in the little room with the squeaky chair that everyone threatens to oil and nobody remembers to. The file cabinet hummed. Outside the door, a kid laughed, the sound thin and brave. He started without preface. "They froze the accounts." "I know. The bank says I signed things wrong." "You did." "They're saying criminal." "They might." His jaw ticked, a habit from childhood that meant a storm he hadn't learned to name. "If you're here to say, 'I told you so,' get it done fast." "I'm not," I said. "I'm here to give you the last decent terms you're going to see." He huffed a small, ugly sound, part scoff, part grief. "Let me guess, you bought the paper." "Months ago," I said. "Under Maria's porch. We kept the rate lower than the bank. We left you a door to walk through. You chose a window to jump out of." He stared at the cinderblock wall like it owed him an answer. "So that's it? You let them take me apart and feel noble about it?" I slid a single sheet across the desk. It was just numbers and dates and 3 short sentences at the bottom. He didn't touch it. "Read it," I said. He read. His face didn't move until the last line, and then one corner of his mouth twitched like the muscle had forgotten which job it was supposed to do. "You're offering work," he said. 40 Saturdays, I said. "Here, you show up at 8, leave at 6. No speeches." "No, I used to. Chairs, trash, tutoring, if you earn it. And you meet with the legal aid clinic we host on Thursdays. You make full disclosure. You call the people you owe and you don't lie to them. You move into the Cedar unit and you pay on time. And after 40, you present a ledger of the last 12 months with more black ink than red. Then we revisit the rest of the debt and set new terms you can carry without lying to yourself." His eyes flicked to the sheet again. "And if I don't?" "The bank doesn't call you next time," I said. "The DA does." He swallowed. Something in the posture broke, shoulders dropping, chin no longer hunting a camera angle. For a breath, he looked tired enough to be honest. "Why are you giving me anything?" he asked. After everything I said." "Because I'm your father," I said, "and fathers tell the truth." "Here's mine. You're too old for rescue, and too young for a grave. Pick work." He stared at the paper a long time, then turned it over like there might be a trick hiding on the backside. Just grainy gray, cheap office stock, no magic. He set it down and rubbed his face with both hands. "I don't know how to be small," he said finally. "Try being exact," I said. "Small is a fear word. Exact will save your life." A knock on the door. Greg leaned in, eyes asking a question he didn't speak. I nodded that I had it. He nodded back and vanished. The squeaky chair squeaked once like punctuation. "Where do I start?" Michael said, and it was the first clean sentence he'd put in the room. "By making 2 phone calls," I said. "The first is to North Ridge to tell them you'll cooperate fully with the audit. The second is to Mrs. Tyson to say you can't pay her by the 15th, but you'll show up Saturday to fix the cabinet door, and swapped the leaky trap under her sink. "And then," I tapped the paper, "you sign." He exhaled through his nose like a runner trying not to spit on the track. "And if I fail?" "You'll fail 30 times, I said. "You'll show up 31. He picked up the pen. His hand shook. He steadied it against the edge of the desk and signed, not flourish, not scribble, letters you could read without guessing. He slid the page back and looked at me like he was asking for a verdict. "That's 1, I said. "You need 40. He stood, then paused at the door. "Dad?" "I told someone you'd never see that 300,000 again," he said, the words thick as he pushed them out. "Looks like I'm the one who never saw it, not really." "You saw it," I said. "You just didn't learn from it. Start now." He nodded once and went to find a broom. The days found their rhythm, as days will when you stop arguing with them. Michael showed up Saturdays, late once, on time twice, early after that, as though the clock had moved from being a judge to being a tool. He hauled tables, sorted coats, held a flashcard deck while a 4th grader wrestled fractions into cents. On the 3rd week, he shadowed Miss June in the kitchen, batches of cornbread measured exact, not ish. And when a pan hit the floor with a clang, he didn't swear. He laughed, then cleaned it and kept going. On the 7th, he sat through legal aid with a tight mouth and open file, answering without decoration. On the 10th, he and Greg fixed the back door and nobody mentioned the long road between them. They just measured hinge placements twice and hit the marks. The bank sent letters. The auditors called. The language was cold and sharp as a February wind, but paper can't bite you if you stop trying to feed it stories. Michael returned every call. He didn't bargain. He asked for lists, and then he crossed things off. On a Thursday in late March, Mrs. Tyson arrived with a bag of biscuits and a receipt for the trap Michael had installed under her sink. "He didn't over-tighten," she said, proud as if she'd trained him herself. "Most men do." I put the receipt and the ledger and the biscuits on the table and told her both counted. Word got around the slow way that matters, over fences, at gas pumps, while 2 dads watched kids, soccer, and pretended not to keep score. The men who had backed Michael when the money felt like magic stopped calling. The ones who had stayed quiet started nodding at him when they passed. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But the absence of a flinch. In mid-April, a thin envelope came from North Ridge. It wasn't a summons. It was a summary. Accounts corrected, access revoked, civil exposure narrowed, criminal exposure avoided, contingent on continued cooperation. A sentence at the end noted restitution scheduled over 6 years, in alignment with demonstrated income. Michael read it under the fluorescent buzz of the office light and let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "I thought it would be a rope," he said. "It's a leash." "Leash is for dogs," I said. "Call it a line. Keep it untangled." He set the letter down and folded his hands, knuckles raw from real work. "How many Saturdays is that?" "All of them," I said, "and then the rest of your life." He didn't argue. The last of the 40 came on a day that smelled like cut grass and new tennis shoes. We dragged 6 folding tables onto the sidewalk for a little math fair. Cardboard games the kids had built themselves. Budget bingo, interest, or illusion. Guess the groceries. Michael ran. True cost. A board with ordinary objects and 2 prices, sticker and reel. After tax time, fuel, repairs. He didn't preach. He asked, and he waited for them to find the answer. A boy in a mariner's cap, Trey, who now insisted on checkers between tutoring sets, slapped his palm on the table. "So it's not really $10? Michael grinned and tapped the column. "It's never just $10, he said. "That's the trick. Now show me the math." They worked it through with pencils and fingers and quiet satisfaction. When the boy got it, he didn't shout. He nodded, slow, like an apprentice putting a tool into the right place in the box. By late afternoon, the shadows had stretched cool and long across the sidewalk. We hauled the tables inside, counted the coffee can, and reset the chairs in 3 straight rows, because crooked rows bug me, and the kids know it now. 40, Michael said, leaning on a broom, cheeks smudged with chalk. It's odd, I thought I'd feel done. You feel started, I said. He set the broom in the closet and stood there with his hand still on the handle like he wasn't ready to let go. I made a list, he said. People I owe calls to that aren't banks. Start with the ones who'll answer, I said. Then call the ones who won't. He nodded. He put the broom away. He closed the door. Sunday, he asked. Bring cobbler, I said. Peach, he said. Exact. We kept the plaque by the front door, "Be kind in this house," and I stopped noticing it until someone new came in and touched it with 2 fingers, like you touch a good wish. The young couple in the old Kendall house sent a photo of their baby's first steps on that porch. Greg rolled his eyes and then saved the picture to his phone like a man who pretends he doesn't cry at commercials. On a Tuesday evening in May, a letter came addressed in a hand I knew, sharp loops, confident slant, Catherine. I opened it at the desk with the squeaky chair and read it once. Inside was a check made out to the center and a note 6 lines long that said nothing about blame and everything about the cost of a life built on borrowed light. I put the check in the ledger. I put the note in a folder marked Keep. I thought you didn't want their money, Greg said from the doorway. I want what it can become, I said. We bought a better printer. We bought a set of used graphing calculators with someone else's initials scratched on the backs. We bought 3 bus cards for kids whose parents were doing their best. We bought flour and salt and yeast. Miss June taught sourdough. That sounded like church when the loaves came out and everyone went quiet, the way you go quiet when a thing is exactly itself. On the first hot day of June, Michael came by the house after work. He didn't ring the bell. He sat on the step with a bottle of ginger ale like a boy who'd forgotten how to knock. I opened the door and sat beside him. I got an offer, he said. Work? Assistant manager, he said. Different division, smaller, boring. Take it, I said. He laughed, small and honest. I thought you'd say that. We watched a neighbor wrestle a grill into compliance. Somewhere down the block, a radio played a song from a summer 20 years ago, and the memory traced itself across the air and was gone. I keep thinking about that money, he said after a while. The 300. It was never about the number, I said. I know, he said. But I keep a slip in my wallet now. It says, what is the true cost? I write guesses on one side and math on the other. What's the difference look like? Respect, he said. Mostly for things I used to think were free. The porch light clicked on. Habit, timer, comfort. He stood and brushed his palms on his jeans like there was sawdust there, though there wasn't. Sunday, he said. Exact, I said. He took the steps 2 at a time like a man with knees younger than mine. At the sidewalk, he turned. Dad. You didn't get your revenge, he said. You got your life. I lifted my hand, palm up. Both fit, I said. Turns out one weighs less. He grinned, then tucked his chin against the evening and walked. When the dark settled, I did the rounds. Lock the back, kill the coffee maker, straighten the shoes lined under the bench, because chaos at the threshold invites it inside. I stood a minute by Maria's photo. The candle had burned to a well. I replaced it with a fresh one and struck a match. The flame took, small and exact, no drama. The house breathed. The street breathed. I did too. We didn't need kings here. We needed men who learned their math and kept showing up. And by the slow arithmetic of mornings and ledgers and Saturdays, that's what we were becoming. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe and join Taste of Revenge family, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on one of the boxes on the right. Thank you for watching to the end.